What's up guys, welcome back to Deck Tech for Decks. I'm your host Caleb. If you guys want to support the channel, you can click on that whatnot link in the description down below. You'll get a free $15 whenever you sign up, and you'll be supporting the channel whenever you do that. Additionally, you can become a patron. Not only is that the best way to support the channel, but additionally, you'll get to vote weekly on a deck tech that I cover. Special shout out to my high contributing patrons. Newsome, you rock. Now, let's get into today's deck tech with Yuma. And this is a very fun deck that has some explosive potential. Now, what we're wanting to do here is get deserts in our graveyard any way possible. We can mill them, we can discard them, we can sacrifice them, and that's going to be the most efficient way. Just sacrifice all of our lands, all of our deserts with a Zoran Orb, cast a Splendid Reclamation, bring them all back to the battlefield, and then we're going to get an instant board state. We're also going to be running some landfall synergies, that way we get additional value whenever those lands enter the battlefield. Now, we're not running a ton of your Amulet of Vigor effects, we're going to more focus on the Lotus Cobra effects instead. There is a lot of deserts that enter the battlefield tapped, but hopefully those effects will mitigate some of that problem. Additionally, there's other cards we get to run. This is just a really fun deck that has a unique strategy of sacrificing lands, playing lands from the graveyard. Once you have a way to sacrifice lands, play lands from the graveyard, and play additional lands on the battlefield, the value engine is on and it can do some insane things, especially with stuff like Greater Good, right? Because Greater Good lets you draw a ton of cards and then you're discarding cards, and if you're discarding deserts, you get more giant creatures to sacrifice to then draw more cards and discard more deserts. So you can kind of create some weird scenarios where you draw almost your entire deck while making a massive board state. We're going to buff up those plants a little bit too. There's a lot of landfall synergies for that. We can play stuff like the new Rhino that just doubles the power. This is going to be very good since they are going to be 4/2s. Now they're going to be 8/6s. We are also going to be playing Beastmaster's Ascension as well. Anything to buff up that 2 defense just to make them really hard to block. If that sounds like a deck tech you want to get into, let's get into it. And hey guys, I will make you the same deal. If we can get this video 500 likes, I will go ahead and build a budget version. Now let's get into it. Let's kick it off by talking about all the early game value pieces that are going to get those lands in our graveyard. Elvish Reclaimer, Shijeki, Jukai Visionary, and Tato Farmer are going to be perfect in this deck. Elvish Reclaimer can tutor up any land and it puts lands in your graveyard. The other two are going to ramp you and mill you. It's just going to be the amazing cards you want to see in your opener. Life from the Loam is also going to be amazing in this deck. Not only can it effectively mill you, but additionally it can get any lands that you need back from your graveyard to your hand. Dune Chanter was literally built for this deck. It's going to mana fix us, it's going to turn all of our lands into deserts, and it's going to mill us consistently. Realms Uncharted can throw 2 lands in the graveyard and 2 lands in our hand, so that's going to be very effective at reducing the cost of our commander and getting the lands we need. Faithless Looting is an amazing effect that can get lands in our graveyard in the early game and draw us into more lands. Seize the Spoils, Unexpected Windfall, and Big Score are also going to be amazing here. Not only are they going to give us treasure tokens, which can be mana fixing in the early game, additionally it's going to get those land cards in our graveyard. Reforge the Soul and Wheel of Misfortune are also good here. It's going to just discard our hand, including the lands in our hand, and then draw us into a brand new hand. From then, we want to be playing land cards from the graveyard. So Hazazon, Shaper of Sand, Ramanop Excavator, Crucible of Worlds, and Conduit of Worlds are going to be amazing here. So now, whenever we do get our commander on the battlefield, we can play those lands from the graveyard to generate a ton of value. Not to mention, we are playing cards like Nahiri's Lethal Forming, so this is just going to allow us to sacrifice all the lands on the battlefield and then just put them right back onto the battlefield, triggering our commander a ton, and all we'll need is something that allows us to play lands from our graveyard. Another crucial part of this deck is the sack outlets for our lands. Zoran Orb and Sylvan Safekeeper are going to be some of the best. They're free and you can sack as many lands as you want. Scapeshift is also going to be amazing here. It's going to trigger our commander a ton, and it's going to allow us to replace all of the lands we sacrifice with more deserts. That way we can sacrifice more deserts. World Soul's Rage is also really good with those sack outlets for our lands, because all we have to do is cast this where X equals a ton, sacrifice all of our lands, and then it will allow us to play those lands from our graveyard. So all we need is a sack outlet in this scenario, and again, that's just going to trigger our commander a lot. Aftermath Analysis and Splendid Reclamation are just going to shove all of our lands that we sacrifice to the graveyard and put them back into play. This can get pretty risky if someone counters them, but hey, I'm all about living life on the edge. Greater Good's going to be amazing here, as well. As said in the intro, we can kind of get into a scenario where we're sacrificing our giant creatures and then discarding more deserts. That way we can kind of just generate a massive board state while drawing through our entire deck. Constant Mists is going to be pretty good here. Maybe someone else is trying to go aggro. This can get us to the late game, and we will stomp in the late game. Moving on, let's talk about how we're going to generate a ton of value off of those 4/2 bodies. Guruk's Uprising, Outcast Trailblazer, Tribute to the World Tree, and Elemental Bond are all going to be amazing here. Now every time we throw a desert in the graveyard, we're additionally going to draw a card. These are just going to be insane value engines. Leafkin Avenger has the potential to add a ton of mana to our mana pool. Terror of the Peaks can flat out win us the game if we generate enough of those creatures. Tireless Provisioner, Lotus Cobra, and Nissa are going to be how we counteract the fact that a decent amount of our deserts are going to be entering the battlefield tapped. So with these on the battlefield, no matter what, we will be generating mana off of our lands. The next thing we want to do is play additional lands. Azusa's Lost but Seeking, Wayward Swordtooth, Dryad of Illusion Grove, Oracle of Moldiah, Exploration. All of these are just going to allow us to play all of the lands we put in our graveyard back onto the battlefield. This is going to allow us to create a crazy value engine with the cards that allow us to play land cards from our graveyard. All we need to do is have a sack outlet and something like an Azusa's Lost but Seeking. Now we can play up to 3 deserts from our graveyard and sacrifice 3 deserts a turn. This is going to generate us a massive board state fairly quickly. Titania is effectively a second commander in this deck. It does basically the same thing as our commander, but just a little more efficient, and those tokens are a little bit bigger. We're also running Omnath Locus of Rage just because this guy's super awesome. Mirage Fury of Akum can flat in the game if we play enough lands. We're also on Avenger of Zendikar. Not only is this a super powerful card with other cards like Scapeshift and Nahiri's Lithoforming, but additionally our commander does make those plant tokens, so this will buff those up as well. We're also playing Phylath, and you're probably like, hey, there's only 3 basics in this deck. Why are we playing Phylath? We don't care about the plant tokens here. We just care that when a land enters the battlefield, we're going to get to put 4 counters on our already existing plant tokens. That's going to make them 4/6s, and it's going to overwhelm our opponents extremely fast. This card does go pretty crazy with Greater Good as well, and just generates a ton of value. We're also playing Railway Brawler. This is going to, again, turn those plant tokens into 8/6s, and that's just going to make them extremely hard to block. If they don't deal with this very quickly, we will just win the game. Beastmaster's Ascension is another solid way to just buff up those plant tokens a little bit. 4/2s are kind of easy to chump and then kill, so making them a little bit bigger is just going to make us super hard to deal with. Annie Joins Up is going to be pretty efficient removal in this deck, and then additionally, our commander is just going to trigger twice. This card's going to be busted in these Naya decks. I'm also playing Reese the Redeemed. This card's going to be amazing if we go off, sacrifice all of our lands to something like a Nahiri's Lithoforming, and then put all of those lands back on the battlefield. This generates us an instant board state, but we can't always do that again the next turn, so Reese the Redeemed is just going to be a solid way to populate all of our tokens that are already on the battlefield. I'm also a terrible person, so I did put a way to destroy everybody's lands in this deck. Now it is 10 mana, so I think that kind of makes it fair. 10 mana win the game. But we're playing Azuri's Predation and Natural Affinity. Sorry, that's 11 mana. So now all we have to do is turn everybody's lands into 2/2 creatures, and then we just drop an Azuri's Predation, and all of those 4/4 beasts are going to fight those lands, effectively just killing all of our opponent's land base, and they're probably just going to scoop on the spot. We can also do this a couple other ways with Blasphemous Act, so we Natural Affinity, Blasphemous Act, Splendid Reclamation. You have to float your mana, but that's going to be a little bit cheaper, but still basically win you the game. We're also playing Selvala Heart of the Wilds. This is just going to be another way to generate a ton of mana in the deck. Heroic Intervention can protect our entire board state, and then we're on Anger. That way we can discard it in the early game and give all of those plant tokens haste. That's going to do it for the deck tech, guys. Remember, 500 likes and we will build a budget version. Thank you guys for watching. I do want to thank my patrons, Excessum, Newsome, Prater, and Chicken Salad. You guys really keep the channel going. With that being said, I hope this helped you in your deck building endeavors, and I will see you in the next one.